welcome in. It is Big Ten today. It's great to have you with us on this Thursday. Dave Revson and Andy Katz. We are less than 3 weeks away from the start of the Big Ten tournament. 3 weeks.
Crazy. We'll be in Minnesota
yesterday.
for a long week. We hope the weather is nice.
Yeah.
Even though the games are inside.
Although we're inside. So I'm not too fixated on
You got those tunnels.
the weather. The Skyway.
Right.
It's
The
called
Skyways, yes.
Great replacement song, The Skyway. You familiar with it?
I am not.
You're not a Replacements fan.
Yeah.
Really?
Prince, though, so I'll enjoy that.
Yeah, okay. But he did not write about the Skyway, as near as I know. He may have. Let's dive into our big story. We've already gone off the rails. It is last night's action in the Big Ten. Couple games that were here on the Big Ten Network. Game one was wild. Illinois let a 14-point second-half lead slip away against Penn State. Nittany Lions pulling out a dramatic 90-89 win at Rec Hall. And Nebraska breaks through in a big way on the road. First conference road victory, 85-70 at Indiana. They hit 14 three-pointers. Let's start with Penn State. And look, in a lot of ways, Illinois is the bigger story just because of where they are in the NCAA tourney picture. But Penn State, I think, has sent notice here with several games during the course of this year that Mike Rhodes is the right guy for this job, that this is going to be a really challenging team to play in the years to come. And also just kind of in the micro of this year, that no game is over with this team. I mean, they've won 7 conference games now, and in 4 of them, they've overcome double-digit deficits.
So a couple things. First of all, we can argue that less is more. Kanye Cleary gone, and they have not missed a beat. You would thought maybe a month ago, with no Kanye Cleary, that was going to be a major issue for Penn State. This was a game where, of course, could they have used his production? Yeah, but they looked like they were in sync. So whatever was going on before, and I know when he came back from his injury, it never really clicked, but this team is together, despite they lost a few in a row. The atmosphere one I want to get to in a moment here. They're a team, as you said, that plays with great effort, passion, fight. Mike Rhodes from the state of Pennsylvania loves this program. We know that for decades, they've had a hard time finding a coach, and Micah Shrewsbury did a great job.
Yep.
But you could say, you know what? That guy wants to be here long term. I'm not saying Micah didn't, but we all knew that if Notre Dame happened, if, who knows, if Indiana or Butler or whatever it opened at the time, if it was the right fit, there was a chance he was going to leave.
Right.
He's from Indiana. And it happened. He goes Notre Dame. Mike Rhodes feels like the guy, never say never, but who could stay there long term. The thing I want to address is the atmosphere. All right?
Yeah, I want to talk about it too.
All right,
yes.
so here's the deal.
Start. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in making sure you have a great atmosphere, not necessarily, and I'm not an athletic director, so I'm not about making the money here.
Right.
I want people in the seats. I want on top of it. And I think that's a better atmosphere for winning, for ultimately building momentum. And here's the deal. So Rec Hall holds 6,150. The Palestra holds 6,200. Those have been their 2 best home games by far this year.
Yeah.
Bryce Jordan holds 15,261. Right. Now, they've done a good job on the weekend, averaging around 10,000 at Bryce Jordan. Weeknight games, horrible. We see it on our network. I texted with Mike Rhodes. He says it was a game changer. He said Pat Kraft, the new AD or newer AD, is all in on this. He would love to play more home games. I think as a start, they really should consider going forward, keeping the Palestra game, playing all midweek games at the Rec Center, weekend at Bryce Jordan, where people have time to come in from other parts of the state. And think about this, Dave. Baylor and Texas, just 2 examples. Texas, they go from a 17,000 Irwin Center to a 10,000 Moody because they wanted intimacy.
Yeah.
Baylor went from a 10,000 Farrell Center to 7,000 Foster Pavilion. Baylor, Big 12, 7,000. So why can't in the Big Ten a school go a little over 6?
I agree with you.
That's my pitch.
Their average attendance is about 8,000. I think 8,053 is their average home attendance. So kind of to your point, look, you're leaving some money on the table. And so that becomes the balancing act. But if the goal is to have a great atmosphere and the goal is to win, and they've won at a tremendous clip at Rec Hall through the years, it's well over 70% of their games that they played there, going all the way back to when they started playing there in the 20s, that they've won. I'm with you 100%. I mean, I've talked about this with people at Penn State literally the entire time that we've had the network of why not explore this as more of a possibility, because it just makes sense. The goal is to win your games. I understand the goal is to make money as well. And so to your point, maybe there's a way to make it a balancing act, but it's undeniable. Again, the players on the court won the game, and we can talk about how they did that.
Right.
But it's undeniable that atmosphere helped them last night.
And let's use UConn as an example. We both lived in the state of
Yes.
Connecticut. Now, that's a little bit different because they have to play in Hartford, because it's a state school and they want to play in the state capital. But the XL Center is somewhere between 17,000 and 19,000, whereas Gamble, much more in that like 8 to 10 range.
And the Gamble games are so much better.
So much better. So there's an example where there's a school, nationally ranked continuously, that has struck that balance, where you have some games in the big arena to placate everybody else, and you have your other games on campus. Now, both these facilities are on campus, but it's clear if they could strike a hybrid here, try it out for a year, Big Ten teams clearly, that come in, they know they have a better chance to win when it's a Bryce Jordan on a cold, windy Tuesday night than going to that thing last night.
Right.
But hey, they're the visitor. They don't have a choice.
Right. Let's dive in a little bit to what happened with Illinois. I feel like we've seen this a little bit now down the stretch. I mentioned this on our show last night, right? We saw it in the Michigan State loss where they just did not execute late in the game. I had the game against Nebraska at home. They won the game in overtime, but Nebraska made a great run to force it into OT before Damask was able to tie the game at the end and force the overtime, and Illinois eventually won. But it just feels like their late game execution hasn't been good, and frankly, they're just not a great defensive team right now. I mean, I've got some numbers I can throw at you.
Throw them at me.
Okay. Since February 1st, there are only 17 high majors that are worse in terms of defensive efficiency than Illinois is. So across the board, there's whatever it is, 60, how many high majors? I don't know, 70, something like that?
65, 70.
Okay, so conference road games, they're 11th in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency. They're first in offensive efficiency. That's all conference road games, not just since February 1st, although I think there's been a drop-off since then. So you look at it and you just say, on the defensive end, for whatever reason, this team just isn't getting it done.
The outlier is Maryland, because as Brad Underwood, he was so excited in that locker room because that was one place he hadn't won yet.
Right.
And Maryland had given them problems the last couple of years in terms of late game situations. Go even back to the Turgeon era, they were good against Illinois in late game situations. My concern for Illinois is, one, last night was a game where Terrence Shannon basically was ball dominant, where he controlled everything and not everyone else was part of the offense.
Right.
And I think that's a concern, as good as Terrence Shannon is, and he was great last night. Number two, if they come up against a team that can really pressure those guards because they do not have a true point guard, that could be a problem in the NCAA tournament.
Agreed. I think impossible to disagree with that. And I think the shame of it is that they do so many things really well, right? I mean, like offensive rebounding. They got 58% of the offensive rebounding opportunities last night. Like, that is an obscene number. It's an unheard of number. So basically, more than half of the time they missed a shot, they got the offensive rebound. Again, that's staggering. There's a lot of things they do well. They have an All-American in Terrence Shannon, but again, the defensive end cost them. And to your point, kind of like late in games, we saw the turnover by Shannon, then we saw the trap where they had to call the timeout. They just struggled to get into what it is they want to do, struggled getting the ball across half court, obviously, last night, and not having a true point guard is part of that. So all this fits together. Look, they're an incredibly talented team. I don't think there's any doubt about it, but we're starting to see a few cracks here, and late game situations are a big part of it. All right, so let's move on and talk a little bit about Nebraska. Third straight win for them. They had to get a conference road win. I mean, I don't think, I've sat through the mock tournament. No one is sitting there and going on a checklist and saying, did you win a conference road game? But I think it just sends a message that, hey, we're not just a one-trick pony here. Even last year with Maryland, where they went on the road and beat Minnesota. Like, just to say we beat someone away from home. So I think that's significant. But I think the other thing is they just played really well. Like, from the get-go, they are a good team. They're a tough matchup for people. When they get going offensively, they're so hard to stop.
So 2 things for that. First off, you're right. They don't look at, okay, you got the conference. Right. I think more significant is when it occurred, because their last true road win, their only other one, was against Kansas State in mid-December. So you're going from mid-December now to mid to late February. Gonzaga won at Kentucky. Obviously, it's a great win. It's a quad 1 win. That wasn't a WCC road win. That was, and they've had those, but that was a good road win for them in late January. So here's Nebraska getting a good road win, regardless who the opponent is, in mid to late February. That's critical. 2, to your point, they proved again they are a very good basketball team. I thought for Keisei Tominaga to go off for 18 in the first half, set the tone, and for the first time in Fred Hoiberg's tenure that I can remember, they're healthy at this point in the year. They've always had injuries late in the season that has derailed them reaching their full potential. And now they are in contention for a double bye, which is pretty remarkable, that they're right there potentially to get that to play on Friday night, where, and I was talking with some of our staffers here out in the hall where, everyone's trying to think who's going to come to this tournament. In Minnesota, Nebraska, they always support their team. Right. If they're playing Thursday, well, they're going to have to at least play Thursday now. If they're playing Thursday or Friday and Saturday, like, good fan base coming. Wisconsin now play better. Good fan base coming. If Iowa keeps coming, good fan base coming. Minnesota now not playing on Wednesday, it looks like. Good fan base. So I think things will start to help the atmosphere at this tournament.
Right. Agreed. They're such a dangerous team. Like, this is a team I look at and think with the right matchups, if they were to get to the NCAA tournament, they could cause some problems for people. I mean, 14 made three-pointers. You think about teams that shoot it well from the outside, that make deep tourney runs. We got to talk about Indiana. I mean, to be at home in the Big Ten, where home teams have been so dominant this year, Andy, and never lead in the game, never one time, even for a second, after you had Northwestern on 8 days rest, you had Northwestern and did not play well in that game either. It's rough to watch. I mean, for those of us who grew up on how great Indiana basketball has been, and look, I mean, they were a tournament team a year ago. I mean, it's not like this thing is cratered out, but man, it's just not there. There just doesn't seem to be that sense of urgency that you would expect from a team at this time of year.
Yeah, I think when we do the autopsy after the season, they obviously got Clale Ware, which was huge pickup in the offseason in the portal from Oregon. The glaring hole is they did not get an elite replacement or some sort of high-quality replacement for Jalen Hood-Schifino. I heard Mike Woodson say after the game they did not expect him to be one and done. I don't think anyone did in the beginning of the season, but it happened. And they are Indiana. They need that's their glaring hole. They couldn't have relied on Xavier Johnson because he wasn't healthy.
Right.
They needed to go get someone, a Lance Jones, a Marcus Domask. I don't care, someone who's going to come in with experience, make shots, defend, and be a leader, because that is the huge hole they're missing on that team.
Guard play just flat out isn't there. And he brought up Xavier Johnson. We did not expect him be out for the year, and I get that. And
but he wasn't healthy at the beginning of the year.
No, I understand. And he brought up youth, too. And youth is, like, when you look at their roster, they are young. They're in the bottom third nationally in terms of Division I experience. So all that makes sense. But I think to your broader point, hey, you're Indiana. We are at a time now when you're able to adjust your roster kind of on the fly. Certainly over the summer, you're able to look at your team and say, this is a potential deficiency. What if Xavier isn't ready to go 100%? And it just hasn't been there for whatever reason. 7 losses in the last 9 games now for the Hoosiers. How's that for an introduction? Our big interview is Iowa's Tony Perkins, and Iowa playing really well here, Tony. As you look at these last 4 games, you guys have won 3 of 4. You've won 2 in a row, Wisconsin, Michigan State. You had a nice win over Minnesota in there as well. Why do you feel like this team has started to click here over the last couple weeks?
I believe the reason we've been clicking, just the communication on the floor. being more active, being more vocal with all players on the court and on the bench as well. And then just the way the coaches have been preaching to us that if we want to make it to March, then we need to pick it up. And I think that really struck a few of us, especially me as well, being a senior. And so I think that's just the way that we took it as we need to play better. We need to do more. So I believe that's the reason why.
And it certainly happened here in this last week. And I would say the Wisconsin game kind of got the ball rolling there a little bit. You were fabulous in the second half and overtime of that game, 16 of your 18 points, including the game winner. Take us through the game-winning play, because it was one of those moments where you're like, oh, no, oh, yes, from the point of view of an Iowa fan.
The play was just for me to get down here and attack the drop coverage. So I just tried to get the ball and find a way to get to the rim. After the shot I shot in regulation, I said, well, this time I can get to the rim. And then I got there and then lost the ball. Then I just happened to recover it and score. That was just the play, I guess.
You didn't play well early on in that game. I mean, as I mentioned, you only had 2 points in the first half. You actually got benched early on in the game. I'm just interested from the psychology of a player. Like, when a game doesn't start well for you, how do you get yourself going again in the way that you did and ultimately become one of the heroes of the game?
I had a few conversations with some of the assistant coaches at halftime.
Okay.
So that kind of changed it as well. Just the determination of wanting to win. That was on my mind the whole time. But the first half, I didn't play so good, and we were at home in a sellout crowd. So I just wanted to get the victory. You know, we need these last few wins to have a secure spot in the tournament. So that was just on my mind the whole time, second half. So.
Without revealing too much, what was the nature of those conversations with the assistant coaches? Like, what did they say to you to get you going?
Not much. Just you, the leader of this team. If we want to win, we need you to do this. We need you to be the best version of you. Communicate with the players. Just go out there, play your heart out for 40 minutes. That's what I did. They said I didn't do good the first half, so I need to pick up the second half, and that was pretty much it.
You spoke after the game about your grandma, and it certainly has been a story a couple times this year. You played with a really heavy heart in the North Florida game, I know, right after she passed away, but the emotions kind of came out after that game. Give people who don't know that story a little bit of insight into just why she was so important in your life.
She was important because she was like a second mother to me, I would say. She did a lot of basketball training, if you want to call it, because she had a basketball court outside, and she just used to rebound and try to put me through drills that she thought was actually drills, but just the love and support that she gave. That was why that was very emotional for me.
Tell me about some of those basketball drills with Grandma. I'd love to see some video of that, by the way.
I might have video of it, but it was just, she had chairs just lined up, crossover, just whatever she saw, she would try to find stuff on YouTube or just find something for me to do outside on the court instead of just shooting. So she would work on this, work on that. So she was trying to switch up every time. So.
You know, some of my favorite stories in this league are under-recruited players who end up turning into stars, and you are one of those players. I mean, you look through your recruiting rankings, and you're somewhere around 300 or so nationally coming out of high school. Iowa was your only high major offers, a lot of MAC and Missouri Valley type schools. Why do you feel like people missed on you? I mean, you're in Indianapolis, you're in a hoops hotbed. Why didn't people other than Iowa recognize how good a player Tony Perkins could be?
I don't know. And that's the same thing I was trying to figure out, but I'm here now, so that's all that matters.
What did Coach McCaffrey, you think, see in you, or what did he say to you as you went through that process that kind of sold you on, hey, this guy understands who I can be?
He gave me a chance to actually play at a high major level. He believed in me. That's what stuck out most, and just the way he allowed me to come in here and just be a part of the Iowa family, and just to have my support, and then support me as well. So just the connection and the relationship that we have and we built through my recruiting process, I would say that's the reason.
Do you play with a chip on your shoulder at all, trying to prove people wrong?
Yeah, I always do.
So what's the message you think you've sent kind of to the basketball world with your play? I mean, I look at this year and you're averaging career highs in points and rebounds, assists, steals. I mean, you're having a great, great year. What does that say to all those people?
Yeah, I missed out, so Iowa got me. So I'm just gonna keep grinding, keep going for them. So that's just the motto for me.
So you're having a great year. How would you compare your game to that of the point guard on the Iowa women's team? Because she's having a good year too.
She's a NCAA scoring leader, so congrats her on that. And also, just heck of a player as well. I need to get in the gym and shoot her a little bit. So,
What's it been like to watch that phenomenon up close? I mean, it's been amazing for us from afar, but just to see kind of all the excitement that Caitlin's generated on campus.
that's amazing. She's changed a lot for the Iowa women's basketball team as well as like the community as well. That's the word we would say is that's tough. So I say.
One of the other big stories for your team, aside from your play, has been the play of Owen Freeman. I mean, he's just having a fabulous year. He's on pace almost certainly to be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Obviously, there's a feeling out period when a freshman comes on campus, and I know you get a chance to play with them at various points along the way, but like at what point did you say to yourself, man, like this guy's pretty good?
Like, honestly, I would say the first or second week when we were playing pickup, it's like, yeah, he's gonna be good. Then also just now the way he's playing, I knew he would be that based off the way he came in and took everything in and understood everything that we were doing defensively and offensively. So I've been expecting this type of season from him, and also. To correct you, he will be Big Ten Freshman of the Year. So.
Yeah, I think he will be too. But you never want to say for sure. You don't know what'll happen down the stretch. But right now, if they vote him, I don't think there's any question. The guy wins the Freshman of the Week literally every week. They could rename the Freshman of the Week award after Owen Freeman at this point. Hey, you were talking about March Madness and getting this team to that point. And the reality is, as I'm sure you know, like right now, you guys are not in the field. Like you look at all this bracketology, you're not there. So how much have you guys talked about like what it's going to take to get you into that bracket?
Won 2 in a row against 2 very good teams. So I believe we can win these next 4 in a row. So that's our goal. And like I said, after that Wisconsin game and before, we just talked about how we want to play in March. So we've just been trying to play as hard as we can and do whatever we can to keep playing and keep going. So that's just going to be what we got to do for us to, excel to where we want to go.
You mentioned being a senior, Tony. You do have an extra year of eligibility. What will be the factors that will weigh in as to whether or not you choose to use that extra year?
Honestly, I don't even know. I haven't even thought about all that yet. I've just been trying to find my way into March, like I said, win these next 4 games, and then figure it out after that.
All right, let's look ahead to the game coming up this weekend. You head to Illinois on Saturday. It's the first of 2 games that you guys have left against the Illini. Kind of a weird scheduling quirk there. Illinois obviously coming off a tough loss last night to Penn State. They probably won't be in a great mood heading into this one. What's the strategy here as you watch the Illini, and particularly that outstanding backcourt on tape?
Now we just got to find a way to be physical defensively. I would say just go out there and play how we played against Michigan State and how we played against Wisconsin. So just go out there and play as hard as we can for 40 minutes. And it'd be tough, when Illinois, the crowd gets a little jumpy. So, but there ain't no excuse for it. So we just got to come out there prepared to play and just end up getting a victory. Then it's all said and done then.
Oh, Tony Perkins, congratulations on a great year to this point for you individually, for your team as well. Looking forward to watching that game coming up here this weekend.
Thank you.
3 games in the Big Ten tonight. We got one on the Big Ten Network. That is Ohio State going to Minnesota. Purdue trying to bounce back from the loss to the Buckeyes. They've got Rutgers. That game's over on FS1. It's followed by Michigan and Northwestern and Evanston, also an FS1 game. Let's start with Purdue and Rutgers. And we were talking with Tony Perkins about facing Illinois after they lose, and maybe there's some bad timing there. There might be some bad timing for Rutgers as well, taking on Purdue here. But Rutgers is built to play well against Purdue. I mean, they have played well against them here in recent years. They won 2 of the last 3 against them in West Lafayette. But also kind of like what they do are the things that give Purdue trouble. So you can talk all you want about who's going to want to play well and who's going to be annoyed about the way that they played last time out. But Rutgers is well constructed to give Purdue problems.
Yeah, last year, Purdue's 2 home losses were against Rutgers and Indiana. By the way, Purdue 32-4 at Mackey during Zach Edey's career. That's pretty good.
Yes.
And they've been stormed on 10 of their last 11 road losses.
Yeah.
That puts Purdue obviously in a high level there. There will be no storming tonight for the Boiler paint crew. For Rutgers, and we'll talk about this later, a little tease, but I've been consistent here. You said, remember last week, that it'd be good to get the Minnesota game. I still say, puts a lot of pressure on them, that they had to go 5-2 to be in position. If they lose this one, then you're looking at ripping off 5 in a row. Is that doable? Yeah, it's doable based on who they're playing. Likely, probably not. But if they're going to win this game, they're going to need to have exceptional play out of Jeremiah Williams, who had a little bit, he'd been sort of ascending, and then it tapered off a little in this last game against Minnesota. There was some foul trouble overall, and I think that just everyone's going to have to step it up another level because they're going to face a Purdue team that's going to be pretty ticked off after what happened against Ohio State.
Absolutely. You look at Rutgers, and I mean, this was an atrocious offensive team before Jeremiah Williams came in, right? I mean, they just were. They're maybe the second best defensive team, defensive efficiency in the country. They're off the charts, fabulous there, and they really were bad offensively most of this year. He's gotten them to the point where now it's, hey, they can score, right? They're 10 points per 100 possessions better with Jeremiah Williams on the court or in the lineup than they were without him. They've gotten to the point where they're reasonable. So now it's, can your defense put you over the top, right? And you look at like what Purdue has struggled with, Andy. So in the games they've had 14 or more turnovers this year, they're 5-3. In the games they've had 13 or fewer turnovers, they're undefeated. So you've got to turn them over, and no one turns teams over at a higher rate than Rutgers does. And so you look at this, that's why I say, like, this is actually, like, there's a reason Rutgers has done well against Purdue. It's because the things they do well are the things Purdue struggles with.
I think a lot of it will come down to Cliff Amore because he's got to stay on the floor. While they have a couple other bigs, no one's like him.
Right.
He can be a problem for Zach Edey and has been because of his athleticism. He can literally dunk over him. Not too many guys can do that, but he's got the athleticism to do that, to be the aggressor. On the other side, I think we're going to know a lot in the first 5 to 6 minutes. I mean, if Cliff picks up a quick 1 or 2, game over. I mean, he's going to have to be he's going to foul, but it's going to have to be spread out over the course of those 40 minutes. They can't go long stretches without him on the floor.
Yeah. Big picture here for Purdue. I mean, again, we kind of see some of these consistent themes in their losses. They don't shoot the 3 well in those games. They didn't shoot the 3 very much at all. Like, I didn't attempt any. Only 9. It was a season low against Ohio State. Lance Jones was the only one who hit one. You kind of look at Fletcher Lawyer and say, man, they really have to get him going. He's got to be a consistent outside threat. And it feels eerily reminiscent to last year where it just kind of felt like he hit a wall a little bit with this game.
I would also say, and they're never going to say this because it's all about the journey, not the Big Ten journey, but the journey to get to March. And we know they're going to be judged by what happens in March. But it feels like they're a little tired of all this road stuff, Yeah. We're the target, we're the big game. You're going to storm us if you beat us. I'm really more intrigued with this team to see what happens in Minnesota before the NCAA tournament. Get them on a neutral court where they've been highly successful this year in Honolulu, in Toronto, in Indianapolis. Those are their biggest wins of the year. What they did out in Hawaii, beating Arizona and Indy, and then Alabama and Toronto. all fantastic wins
Right.
against teams they may face in March. And so it just feels like they just got to get through these next couple weeks. Just get through it. They're going to be a 1 seed. Whether they're 1 overall or not doesn't matter because they're going to be in Indianapolis for the first 2 rounds. They're going to have the pressure to get out of those 2 rounds to get to Detroit. So they're the one team that I think we almost can fast forward to Minnesota in a couple weeks. Just get through these next couple weeks because that's where we'll be able to judge. If they play at their high level on a neutral court at the Target Center, that's the team that has a chance to win it all.
Fair point. Interesting. Let's talk about Northwestern and Michigan tonight. Michigan already, as we know, on the road has been playing without Doug McDaniel. We presume they will continue to play without.
Yeah, there's no update on whether or not it ends tonight. It could continue. They don't know yet, and that's what Michigan's told me.
Olivier Kamwa now is out as well. So you're down your top 2 scorers, again, assuming McDaniel doesn't play
Well, he's not playing tonight.
For sure not playing
he's
tonight.
not playing.
Okay, so McDaniel out. You're down your 2 top scorers. The story in this game really is Northwestern and Boo Buie. He's 5 points away from becoming the all-time leading scorer. And this is a game, frankly, Northwestern just cannot lose. You have to win this game.
Yeah, well, so talked to their staff this morning, Michigan that is. Will Cheddar, Trey Jackson, they're going to sort of fill that void for Olivier. But, I mean, you're looking at almost 15 points a game down to those guys score, in the single digits. Will Cheddar maybe can give you a little more perimeter scoring than Trey Jackson. And this is actually the one game where, they're not going to be, the athleticism or the physicality outside of Nicholson is not going to be as much a problem for them. But they're on the road. Northwestern, outside of Chicago State, is unblemished at home. So they're unblemished in the Big Ten. They've got a really good home court at Welsh Ryan. And we've got a big-time thing happening tonight, which is Boo Buie's going to become, barring some freaky thing, I mean, he's going to likely become the all-time leading scorer in Northwestern history. So there is some significance to tonight. There's going to be atmosphere, energy. But I think, the win over Indiana, I thought spoke volumes. So forget what Indiana did against Nebraska. You said it earlier. They had 8 days to prepare for this game.
Yes.
Indiana, that is. And so you've got
And Northwestern was coming off a tough road loss against Rutgers. So you travel out to Rutgers, you travel home, then you got to go down to Indiana.
And now you are fully without Ty Berry.
Right.
Because they knew he was done for the year, not just sort of floating around. And so you've got Justin Mullins and Blake Smith, and they've got to step up. And Chris Collins told me this morning, he says, look, that last 8 minutes in that game, of the first half, when Boo and Barnizer had 2 fouls, he felt like they really stepped it up for them. And there's a confidence factor that they're lacking that he's hoping will come on here. They kind of look scared to shoot, Mullins and Smith. Mullins was a scorer at Denver for the most part.
Right.
Smith a walk-on, but they're hoping that will turn for those 2 guys. Just give them something. If you're wide open, because you will be wide open, because they're going to leave you open, make that shot if you can.
Well, Mullins played great against Rutgers. I mean, offensively, too, he was 3-3 from the field. He had 4 blocks. It just didn't seem to carry over to the Indiana game. I'll tell you, Northwestern has to get Brooks Barnhizer going again offensively. He's been in a slump, and this whole team, I mean, since Ty Berry went out, so the 3 full games they played without Ty Berry, they are shooting, this is from 2-point range, 33% from 2-point range. And this was one of the most efficient offenses in the Big Ten all year with Ty Berry, 33%. There's only 3 teams in the country that are worse than that in that stretch. So they've got to figure out a way to get some more easy baskets. Berry was such a floor spreader for them, but give them a ton of credit for this. Defense and rebounding, they have been so much better.
And Nicholson's playing much better overall.
So much better, right? So it feels a little more like last year's team.
Yes.
Right now.
And they're hanging on by a thread to that double bye.
Yes, yeah. Again, can't afford to lose it. Michigan, 6 straight road losses. Last 4, all of them by at least 19 points. Of the interesting storylines there. But Minnesota is probably the biggest story in this game, as big as Ohio State was with the win over Purdue. I mean, you look at Minnesota right now, Andy, and we're going to talk about NCAA tourney hopes here in a little bit with Minnesota and a couple of other teams. But they're 500 in the league. They've got some opportunities here going forward, but this is one of those games you've really got to win at home if you're going to make a serious push.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to lay out what they've got ahead here, but this is one of those ones they cannot afford to lose.
Right.
Ohio State on Sunday, look, it was one of those unique situations. Came against Purdue, but all the emotion of the first game without Chris Holtmann, Jake Diebler showed that emotion talking about it here on the show the other day. So everything sort of clicked right for Ohio State to get that one at home. They had a great crowd, which they normally haven't had. I mean, I was there for that Wisconsin game last month, and the crowd wasn't great, but everything was like, everyone was into it to try to make it happen, push them across the line. Now you go on the road. Now you got Jamison Battle, who made some big shots, free throws in that Purdue win. How does he handle this? How is he received? I would hope well, but you never know.
Right.
How does he handle the beginning of the game? Does he try to, prove a point? Does he shoot too much? Does he get them out of their own rhythm and their offense? This is going to be really intriguing to see how he handles this moment. For Minnesota, you and I have talked about, we love their roster. Yeah. They've got all the pieces. Now they got to be able to close out games, which they were able to do, for example, against Northwestern. That was a great example of that. That showed their maturity at home. But yeah, this is a game that if they have aspirations of the NCAA tournament, they cannot lose.
I would agree with you 100%. And, you do look back on a few games during the course of this year, right? You certainly think about the Missouri game, and that was one that was just absolutely brutal. You think about Iowa, right? I mean, they've blown some big leads this year in games that they easily could have won. This is one where, again, you kind of need to take care of business. You talk about how good this team is and how much we like their roster. Like, it just feels like they're getting better and better. Like, Pharrell Payne was unbelievable last time out. And you just think about him. I mean, the guy is only a sophomore. You think about what he could look like a year from now or 2 years from now, how good this front court can be. Ola Joseph is a player, I think, with a load of potential. Ben Johnson has built a really nice roster here. And if you can figure out a way to finish strong, even if you don't end up as a tourney team, but if you can finish out a way.
Well, I think for sure they should be an NIT team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really
you can build
on
that, right? And I mean, look at Wisconsin was an NIT team in a disappointing way last year and has built off of it. If you're Minnesota and you're excited to be in the postseason after a year going, I'm not writing them off from the NCAA. I think, like eye test wise, I think they are an NCAA tournament team.
Well, and Cam Christie. Cam Christie's obviously had a really good freshman year. I mean, you just hope in this era, and I don't know anything on this regard. I just hope in this era you can keep it together, which is not easy. Because if you do, they're going to be one of those teams we're going to look at next year that's going to be near the top. I mean, with Edey gone, we all assume, even though technically he could come back, Payne would be one of the best bigs in the league, without question, assuming he comes back. So, the other game, Michigan State, look how well they played there. And then last Thursday night, they gave Purdue a run for their money at Mackey.
Yep. Ohio State trying to avoid its 17th straight road loss. That would be a school record were the Buckeyes to lose tonight. That stat is brought to you by Walgreens. We look at the Big Ten standings. Top 6 right now from Purdue on down to Michigan State are all in Mike DeCourcy's bracket as of Tuesday. The question becomes, can the Big Ten get more than 6 into the NCAA tourney? Obviously need all those 6 to get in, but then Iowa, Minnesota, Rutgers among the teams trying to work their way into being contenders. I do think it's fair to say right now, Andy, like none of these teams are in. I mean, you go to all, the bracket matrix, there's not a single bracket out there that has any of these teams in. So they all have work to do. We were talking with Tony Perkins about Iowa. I think Iowa's a really interesting case because a week ago they had 0 quad 1 wins. They've won 2 games, but now they have 3 quad 1 wins because the Minnesota game has become a quad 1 win for them as well. So you've got 3 games now that are quad 1 victories, and you've got a bunch of quad 1 opportunities left. So if they continue to play well down the stretch here, I do not think it is crazy to believe that they could find their way in.
Yeah, it's been a revolving door of this 7th team. One thing I want to point out, don't only compare Iowa, Rutgers, Minnesota. If you're going to look at this, look at Xavier, which just lost to Providence. Colorado and Utah, which are struggling. K-State is, going down. Pitt lost to Wake. Those are the schools they're in competition with right now. So just that's out there. I agree with you. Iowa has maybe the best schedule to earn a bid. 2 Illinois games, at Penn State and at Maryland. Northwestern, excuse me. At Northwestern. You can read my own handwriting. So they have opportunities right off the bat. And it's not just quad 1. They look at combined quad 1, quad 2. They are 8 and 10, which is a really good percentage in those 2 quadrants, which I think will help them.
And then I think you just look at them and you say, like, with the way they can score, like it's not at all unreasonable to think, could they go out and win some of those games? I mean, they're a team that when they are clicking, they are absolutely the team that has the look of an NCAA tourney team, and it feels like they're peaking at the right time. Okay, what about Rutgers? They have 3 quad 1 wins. The metrics do not like them at all, and that is a function of the offensive issues. As we talked about, efficiency numbers are a part of this now. And Rutgers, as great as they are defensively, have not been very good offensively. But what about in terms of the opportunities in front of them?
Yeah, so real quickly, 3-9 quad 1, 3-1 quad 2, so 6-10 in the combined quads, not as good a percentage. Opportunity starts tonight at Purdue. They're also at Nebraska, at Wisconsin, home, Maryland, Michigan, Ohio State. I said it, you got to go 5-2 in their final 7. They lost the first one of those 7 at Minnesota. So now you've got 6 games to work with. See what happens.
And remember, they showed up in Mike DeCourcy's next 4 out last Friday. So they were among the first 8 teams out of the tournament. So not a crazy stretch. Again, they're not in anyone's bracket, but they're at least in the discussion. Finally, Minnesota. Again, that's another team that I look at and I watch them play, and I think it's not you don't have to squint to see them as an NCAA tournament team. The issue, though, for them is just 1 quad 1 win.
But they got a lot of quad 2, 5, so they're 6-8. They have opportunities. See what happens. They've got at home Ohio State tonight, Penn State, Indiana. You got to win all 3 of those. So now you look at the road: at Nebraska, at Illinois, at Northwestern. Those are all teams in the field. What if you beat 2 of them?
Right.
Those are teams in the field.
Yeah.
So they have opportunities. That's the beauty of being in this conference. It's only going to get better with 18 teams. Down the stretch, these Big Ten teams have opportunities that other leagues around the country don't have as many.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think what's really interesting about these teams, and again, they don't have the resume for it right now.
Yet.
But I just don't think it's unreasonable with any of them to think that they could get it done.
Yes.
All 3 of them are good teams.
And on Thursday and Friday in the Big Ten tournament, they're going to get a quality win.
Yeah, good point. Okay, good stuff. What do you say we do this again tomorrow?
I'll be here.
You up for that? All
Yes.
right. We will see you tomorrow on Big Ten Today.